Welcome to Creating a Life in Music. My name is Mike Salo. I'm a guitarist and music educator from Minneapolis, Minnesota in the US, and I want to know how other musicians make their living, how they got there, how they sustain it, and most importantly, the insights and tips they may have for the rest of us. I interview musicians from all over the world, from various parts of the music industry to break down the question, how do I do music full time? So join me as we discover the many different ways to create a life in music. If you're a guitar player who's ever wanted to attend music college but couldn't because it's too expensive or too far away, or maybe you're just beyond that point in your life and you're just too busy with your own family and your own career to commit to something like that, I would highly recommend going and checking out fretboardbiology.com. At only $29 a month, Fretboard Biology takes out all the guesswork, putting the right things in the right order. It's highly structured, highly organized, college-level guitar program designed by one of the top guitar educators on the planet, Joe Elliott. Joe was head of the guitar department at McNally Smith for a number of years, where he designed the entire guitar curriculum, as well as being head over at Musicians Institute in Hollywood for many, many years. He knows what you need to know. And you can get 50% off your first month when you go to fretboardbiology.com/register-salo, my last name, that's S-A-L-O-W. So fretboardbiology.com/register-salo. I'm super curious. So you're a founding member of Unearth, and I remember coming up kind of playing the metal scene, and that whole East Coast metal scene was all like the talk of the town, like Unearth, Killswitch, and kind of all those other bands that came from that area. How was it growing up in the metal scene? So you guys started in the late 90s?
Yep, late 90s.
And is that your first, I guess, catapult into the music industry was through that band, or were you doing stuff before?
I was playing in a lot of local bands, which everyone kind of does. And I think I started playing in bands when I was like 12 and 13 years old. And I was a pretty good guitar player back then, to where older kids would recruit me to be in their band. So I was playing in a band called Lull with a singer that started the band Agoraphobic Nosebleed. His name's Jay. So it was like kind of like a band that was like, I don't know, only together for a short period of time. I probably got booted from the band probably because I fucked up a show or something like that. But I was only like 12. I was literally like 12 or 13 years old. But I shortly after that, played in a band with, I saw a band that I really liked at a Battle of the Bands. And I remember seeing Buzz in a band called .04. And I remember saying to my buddy that was at the show with me, we're sitting in chairs because it was in a high school, it was in a high school,
auditorium or something?
Auditorium, yeah. I was going to say amphitheater. But I remember saying to them, wow, this band's kind of metal and they're heavy. And I was just kind of I said something to my friend, oh, if I was ever going to be in another band or something, I'd want to be in a band like this. And, time went on, I played in a couple other bands. Word got out about some of my antics on stage. Cause as a kid, I still played the way I play now. I was flipping the guitar over, pretending to tap, without the strings, and just being a meathead on stage. And Buzz got wind of that, and he called me one day and just said hey, you want to we're .04 is losing a guitar player. You want to be in that band? And I was like, hell yeah. I was super honored. And I was getting offers from I think bigger bands in the area at the time, but I really wanted to play with that band. And I just kind of, tunnel vision, just I want to do this. But when you say what was it like being in Massachusetts, I'm born and raised Danvers, Massachusetts, and that's where the Crucible that was written about, it's Old Salem Village, all the witch trial stuff happened there. There's so many great bands in this area: Cave In, Converge. Killswitch wasn't even a band yet. They were at Aftershock. That wasn't until I started going to college, where I met Adam and all those guys. But when I was in high school, I would always go to these shows in the middle of the woods. There's a place called the Red Barn, and all these amazing bands like Sam Black Church, Overcast, as I said, Converge, Lull, Cave-In, Alert. I'm trying to think of other bands, just Daltonic, and all these bands would come through. And it was such a thriving music scene in Massachusetts, and it was very, very, very competitive. And when I say competitive, it wasn't like people were competitive against each other. It was very organically, like the bands were just so good, and in order to get noticed, you had to level up. Like you had to be pretty damn good to even get a show or be recognized, and that's like pretty intense for being 14, 15 years old trying to play in the scene. So yeah, I spent a lot of time just watching bands, and there was a lot of great bands that came before us. Like, you would always point to like New York City and see like bands like Sick of It All and Madball and like some tougher bands, and then you got Boston bands like Mighty Mighty Bosstones and what do you call it? I used to really love, not many people outside of Massachusetts know them. Sam Black Church was one of my favorite bands of all time. I think they were like the first type of Dillinger Escape Plan band I've ever seen in my life. And the singer was like the best front man I've ever seen. So there was like so many bands before us that were just so great. And the scene was just thriving, like at all times, always on, pedal was always in the metal.
Yeah. Geez. Yeah, being from the Midwest, it's just you're so disconnected. There's a scene here, but it's just not. It wasn't quite like that. So that would have been such an interesting thing to be a part of. Was that so? Essentially, what were kind of like the big years for that? Was that right around like 2000, 2002, 2003 kind of?
No, that's late. Like when you, it's funny,
really?
when you and I were talking before you were filming, it's like, those are the late years for me in my head. The early years for me are 93 to 97 or maybe, wow. That bracket of time. You got to think like all the great bands that came out of this area, there was so many bands and those bands doing it at that time to where there was such an amazing scene happening. Like Jesse Leach was in Corinne. Converge owned the scene back then because they were just so sick. There was some really good like metal bands like or hardcore bands like Reason Enough was a good band in Boston, and like there's Diecast and like Die My Will and 7 Day Curse, and there's all these like underground bands you probably never heard of in your life, but like I could still point to some of those records, and I do sometimes on the As I Lay Dying bus, and just be like, this is the heaviest breakdown ever, check this out. And like I'll play something and they'll be like, Jesus Christ, there was some serious stuff happening in the scene, and it all started with like you book a VFW hall show and these dudes would show up that you heard their demo and they would just be so sick, like Brian Fair was in Overcast with Mike D at the time, and like that band was massive. There's just so much good music during that period of time.
Oh, damn, I'm jealous. That would have been wild. Yeah, I guess at the time that I got into metal bands, I guess that's maybe why I even referenced the later years, because that's about the time I actually started getting into playing in metal bands, was about 2002, 2003. Because I would have been like a, freshman or sophomore in high school. So for me being from Midwest, I was probably just discovering all that stuff. Because Killswitch had just come out, and then I probably discovered like even Unearth a little bit late, As I Lay Dying a little bit late, and Killswitch hadn't just come out. They hadn't just come out. They had just released Alive or Just Barely Breathing, right?
Yeah,
Alive or Just Breathing. So that was their second. So that felt also fresh at that time, being from middle of nowhere Midwest.
Yeah, well, listen to like Aftershock, and like Adam was already doing some great shit there, and obviously,
I listened to that now.
When they removed his brother as the singer, Toby, and got Jesse, and like the band started, like Adam made a very conscious decision to be like, Joel and I went to school together at Berkeley. He's a great guitar player. I'm a great drummer because Adam was playing drums at the time. Yeah. Mike D is a fixture in the scene. He's a name guy. And then you got Jesse, who was in Corinne, who's somewhat of a name guy too as well. And like he was piecemealing this band together. But it's really funny. Like I I don't want to take full ownership, but I'll say that I think I am the one who bridged East and Western Massachusetts together, because one year I decided, like, I played a lot of sports and I went to school for sports scholarships, hockey and soccer. I actually got like courted by like bigger schools like UVM and other schools to play hockey. And I ended up, for some reason, just deciding to go to a state school for 1 year. And all my friends from my soccer team and high school were going to a place called Westfield State. And it wasn't like a great college, but I just want to make sure Westfield was good for me, and just college in general was good for me. And it was really funny when I went there halfway through the year, around like Christmas time. I met this kid named Theo, and he played in a band called Catch 13, which was a lot of the guys that you know that are like the techs of Kill Switch and all these guys, like they're all friends. So these guys have been around for a while, and I remember being at this like radio station thing, and I made friends with Theo because he was playing Hatebreed records and all the same records I was listening to, and I said, hey, like, I don't know anybody that listens to metal around here, and I have a band in Boston, and like, I'd love to exchange shows and also go to shows. Is there anything around here? And they took me under their wing, and they were just really sweet people, and being like, yeah, man, like, come, I have a band, and like, it's a straight edge hardcore band called Catch 13. And I met so many great people. I met like Scott Lee from the Palladium, and I met like Adam and Joel and all these guys, like very, very young. So we were organically friends before any of this started happening, and we were just in bands. And it was truly like just a cool hometown, like vibey kind of thing. And sure enough, we would exchange shows, Boston and Western Mass. And like, that's how it all kind of started, the cross pollination.
Very cool. Yeah, that answers my next question about school. I was curious about your college experience. Did that involve music at all, or is it just it was for sports scholarship? Or
I am not the best musician in my family. My brother and my sister are very, very smart. And my brother's a well-accomplished guitar player. Like, he went to Berkeley 4 years, absolutely shreds. He's way better than me at like, the shreddier aspect of guitar. Like, I definitely, rhythm and writing and creativeness and all that stuff. Like, I'd probably have him for sure, but like, he's definitely like, he's got some licks. And there's a lot of times where I tap him and I'm like, all right, I gotta do a solo on this record. Like, what do you think? And he's like, oh, check this out. I just learned this. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, all right, I'll do that. So there's still a lot of that, like, brotherly, like, hey dude, like, big brother, tell me like what to do. My sister was a concert pianist and a vocalist, and she went to the Boston Conservatory for 2 years, and then tried to do musical theater full time. And in order to do so, you have to get, I believe it's called like residency or your passport or whatever they call it in that industry. And she had to she went on a Hawaiian cruise ship for years to try to gain her the credentials in order to even make it into Broadway and stuff. So she did that for a bunch of years. So I watched them do school for their 4 years, and my parents like definitely paid a lot of money for them to go to these prestigious schools. And I was always of the mindset of youth is important to me when it comes to being like playing music or sports or anything. So your age matters. If you truly love something, you practice it regardless if it's school or not. I always looked at music school as this thing that would be so fantastic to go to, but I also said to myself, well, it's going to swallow up my years, my youth, and it's also going to cost me a lot of money in order to get a degree to do what? Teach or be in a pit orchestra or something. There's nothing like, I can't be Slash or I can't be Ace Frehley if I'm stuck in a school. So I always saw it the other way. I was like, my dad ran a business for years and stuff, and I was like, I'm going to go to business school because I'm going to college for sports and school and whatever, sports and learning business. But I said, I feel confident in my ability as a guitar player and using the instrument to have fun with versus it being a chore. And I was just very adamant about I want to be able to run a business when I have one, whether it's in music or if it's out of music. So I'm really good at statistics. I'm really good at finance. I am really good at business in general. And I took a minor in marketing, and all of that kind of helped me later on in life. And I still say it to this day, if there's something specific that you need to go to music school for, to do it, like to literally, like, I want to do this. I want to be a studio engineer and I have to work at this particular place and you need a degree to do it, I would say do it. But for me, I was like, music school is going to ruin me in the sense that like everyone's going to be competing, everyone's going to be not having fun with the instrument, and everyone's going to be like super snobby. And in my case, I was like, I would like to play music that makes myself and my friends and people around me happy, because music is a feeling. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's like when you yawn and someone next to you yawns and you just made them catch your yawn. It's like the same thing. It's like, I want to do that with a guitar. Like if I play something and it makes me feel good and it makes someone else feel good and it's a spiral effect, that's the most important thing. It's not the scales. It's not the shredding and the 4 hours of practice. Like all that stuff is about like conditioning, but it's how you apply it. And you can do that on your own.
If you're a guitar player or bass player, you should really have a copy of Guitar Pro tablature software. I've been using Guitar Pro for like 15 years, and I really can't live without it. At this point, it's sort of an industry standard within the guitar education realm, and it's really easy to use. You can make all your licks and write out all your songs, and you can actually use it in conjunction with ultimateguitar.com, where you can download Guitar Pro files and learn all your favorite songs. So I couldn't recommend this software enough. And if you use the code MikeGP at checkout, you can get 10% off your copy of Guitar Pro 8. That's Mike, MikeGP, at checkout, guitar-pro.com. Yeah, it's a really good point. Because I actually just had this thought recently about, I've had it many times actually, about the idea of going to music school and what that changes in your trajectory as a musician, because it does have, like, going to school for a performance degree. I've had this conversation with one of my really good buddies. How did he put it? He said it hurts your wallet, but it like feeds your soul for music, of like improving. So he's like, but that's about it. He's like, all I did is I feel good and better about my playing. He's like, but it really almost did nothing else, because there's limited things. I mean, really the only thing you need a music degree for a guitar is to teach higher ed, whether that be at a high school or a college. So you can get those things, and I've had those, but you know, looking back, it's such an interesting perspective of like, what would have happened had I not done it? Would I have pursued the band thing more? Because I essentially was playing and trying to do the touring thing, and then I think something just flipped where I was like, you know, I'm going to go to school for music. I want to go to college. And that's what I did. I just kind of stopped. But it was like this weird hiatus. It was almost like this weird pivot, because now I don't play in the same groups I played before I went to college. Before I went to college, it was like all metal bands, lots of like small little, you know, stints, little week-long things or whatever. And then now it's like corporate events and weddings, good pay and stuff, but it's not the same thing I did at all. Now that I do all that personally through my own projects, but still fun, still great. And then there was this point I was going to make when I was talking about that. Regardless, I did want to ask on how, so you start the touring thing. So how long were you always was it full-time touring in, like, with Unearth once that kind of took off and started going, or were there other things you were doing around? Like, were you doing like teaching lessons or like doing other side gigs, or like what did that look like?
I never taught a single person how to play guitar in my life. I just feel like music is such a, I feel like it's a cool thing to show people things, but I would never sit there and like teach somebody, because I really do believe that guitar, drums, any type of musical instrument, or even if it's photography or painting or whatever, it's an expressive thing. So whatever it is that you have bottled up inside of you, you need to reach in there and get it yourself and figure out what it is that you want to learn. And I actually just saw a cool Chris Shiflett and Rivers Cuomo were just having a conversation about like their younger years and stuff. And you know, Rivers was like, oh yeah, I learned like a bunch of Yngwie Malmsteen things, and here I am playing in Weezer. And he had all these like great stories and anecdotes and stuff, but it's funny to see like what's inside of you and then what you get out of it later. And for me, I didn't ever want to make guitar into being a job. So basically what it came down to was I was playing in .04 with Buzz when I was 17 years old. and I was just a really young kid. And it got to a point where I spent about 2 years in that band, and the singer was much older than me, and he kind of like big brothered me in a sense, where he was always like, this kid, he'd always treat me like a little shit. And I've never been in my life like an antagonistic person or anything like that, but he just definitely took every opportunity in order to like dig at me a little bit here and there, just being like, just kind of like, I don't know, whatever, crusty, as I like to call it. So I just said to Buzz one day, I'd like to do this band. I'd like to do a new band with you. And to be honest with you, my first guitar was a 6-string when I was 9 years old, but when I was 11 or 12, I bought a Universe. Nice. A store was going out of business, and I got a green Loch Ness green Universe for $1,100, which is more money in the world, but my parents luckily bought it for me. But I learned how to play guitar on 7-string. And at that time, we were talking 1997. Yeah. Everyone was playing straight edge hardcore and very simple stuff. And I was saying, I always played like Cacophony while trying to play Cacophony stuff and shredding. And I said to Buzz, I'm kind of getting bored with this hardcore thing. And I really want to do this type of band on this type of guitar, which nobody's doing. And I need the extra string to play sweeps and all the shapes feel right and all that crazy stuff. And he was like, yeah, sure. And it was really tough for him to break up with a band that he was in. His identity was that for a very long time. And all those guys in that band were his friends. But ultimately it was me, Rover, and Mike Rudberg, the drummer. We all left this band called Point oh Four. We basically kicked out the singer and we just started writing, but the same practice, where we broke up with that band, we wrote our first song, Shattered by the Sun. And from there, it was kind of magical, where everything we were writing just felt so good to us. And it was so fresh. And even when we played live, or there was a lot of shows we played in jam spaces, because everyone was still playing the same old kind of tough guy shit or straight edge shit, which I like both of those types of bands, but we were just kind of different. And everyone was just they definitely recognized almost overnight, everybody was just like, oh shit, this is different. And people wanted our demo tapes. Our friends wanted our demo. So we went in the studio and recorded it, and then people started just catching on to it and stuff. So I never wanted to make music a business per se, or look at it as a chore, but I was definitely I want to have as much possible fun with it. And it's funny too, because by the time we hit our first full length record and all that stuff, I was implementing 3 stringed arpeggios over breakdowns. And recently, Tosin Abasi was hanging out, we were hanging out, and he goes, I think you're the first person I ever heard put a sweep arpeggio over a breakdown ever. He's like, your first record, there was this part where you did a sweep arpeggio. It was and he was just he's like, that blew my mind back then. And I was just like, holy shit. I'm and then I started thinking to myself, I'm was there anything like that before then? And I don't think there is. Prove me if I'm wrong. But yeah, 2000 at that point was that's when we were starting to do stuff like that. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve. But yeah, those years of being just a local band, and all that stuff, it was tough. And to answer the second part of your question, I was doing it full time. I was playing sports at University of Massachusetts. I left Westfield State, went back to the East Coast, played sports there, but every single weekend was a tour. So I would get out of class early on Friday. We'd play Philly, Jersey, New York. We'd play New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island. Every single weekend was a thing. And then luckily, I knew stuff was happening with the band, especially when we started playing New York and New Jersey more, and our fan base was getting bigger at a very local level. We met bands like Indecision and a lot of other cool bands, and Prayer for Cleansing and Undying. And we started meeting all these cool people doing these great things. And, our sound started changing, and I knew that I had to finish college early, so I got a degree in less than 3.5 years. I sped up the process by going to school during winters and summers, and luckily on my graduation day, 2001, I literally walked with a cap and gown, and then I got on a plane and I flew to our first show of our first tour in Salt Lake City.
Wow. Pretty wild. How did you manage? So you guys, you said your college was on the west side of Massachusetts, so you were back and forth all the time?
That was my freshman year of college. Yeah, that school was not. It wasn't challenging. As far as it was everything I kind of learned in high school, and I didn't feel challenged when it came to my studies. And the soccer situation and the scholarship wasn't the greatest for me. I didn't really like vibe with the coach, and I got recruited by University of Massachusetts in Boston to play soccer for them, and it was actually great timing because I just decided. I would like a change of pace. I wanted to go to a harder school academically. And it was also at the time I was like, yeah, I can be in my band.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. So that made it easy in that regard. And then you guys, so you graduate college, you start your first big tour, and then you're full-time in Unearth for how many years after that point?
So this was the plan. This was the plan. I graduated college. And I was a tax examiner for the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. And I remember it was like a $60,000 a year job or whatever it was. But in 2007, coming out of school, that was like unbelievable money for me. And I remember I told my parents that I was going to finally pursue music. I said, I've been neglecting this my whole life because I've been a full-time athlete from the time that I was born throughout college. Now, mind you, when you play soccer and hockey in college, it's all about, you have the morning practice, you have your studies, you have your schooling, and then you have night practice, and then you travel for games. It's like being a professional musician. It's not like I'm like in one place at one time and I had to do that for 2 seasons. Beginning of the year, September through December, and then December hockey starts. And so I told my folks, I said, finally, I'm done with school and I would like to just see this through. And I know that I can get a job. My degree is still relevant, but I just want to make sure that we do, I just want to do 2 years of this. I just want to see what happens in 2 years. And sure enough, 2001, 2002, and 2003, we signed to ULG Records. We did a bunch of tours with Poison the Well, Zayo, and all these bands that were fucking ginormous. We got really lucky and became friends with those guys, and we were killing it. And we were kind of pseudo famous, because I know for a fact that ULG Records was printing more records than they were accounting for. So we were I think as kids we sold probably underground, I would guess 60 or 70,000 records, but to them, it was 17,000. You know what I mean? They were lying to us for sure, because our people were starting to become a big ass fucking band and everyone had our shirts and shit. And I remember that being whoa, we just played Hellfest and we just played all these crazy festivals and people know our lyrics and stuff. And there's no way we sold this amount of records. So right at the time, the 2-year mark, I sat down with my folks. And they sat me down because I was going really hard in a van with the guys from 97 to 2002 ish. We were on the cusp of signing to Metal Blade, and I remember we got offered a tour with Damage Plan after that 2 years, from 2001 to 2003. And I remember my mother sitting me down saying, aren't you just tired and over this? Don't you want to have kids? Don't you want to have this kind of life and all this other stuff? And I was like, I do, Ma. I was like, I can't. I said, I can't stop right now. I know I said I'd give it 2 years, but that was only if I failed. I'm about to go on tour with Dimebag.
Yeah, seriously. Geez.
Yeah, I'm I know you don't know who they are, but this is a really big deal, and I can't stop now because we're at this weird point where this is big, you know?
That's huge.
And, yeah, and by that time, mind you too, my parents never came to my show. My parents were super. They helped me through they were supportive. They helped me through the process. They would always be really cool about music to me because they were musicians. My dad played in a surf rock band. They got it, but they didn't understand because they only saw me play in 1997 at a VFW hall once. They had no concept of what was happening. And then when I told them how big this thing was, I invited them to another show where some of my other family members on the Susi side came, and it was at the Songus Arena in Boston, which is it fits, you know what I mean, whatever, 7,000, you know what I mean? It was a massive concert, and they were they came out and they were holy shit. And then my mom started getting like recognized that when I started getting in music, catalogs and stuff with Ibanez guitars and stuff, or people started knowing who I was. My mom started getting recognized at the supermarket. So she was like, "Oh, cool." Like someone's like, "Mrs. Susi, are you related to Ken Susi?" She's like, "Yeah, that's my son." And she'd feel this great pride and stuff. And they're so proud of me to this day, but it was definitely like shocking for them because they didn't know what was up.
Yeah. Guys, you can imagine. So like, there's not like there was high-speed internet just to like check in on what the,
No.
how many nowadays it's so like you can just go online and go, all right, let's see what this is about. Oh, pretty big deal. Okay. And then move on to the next thing. Yeah. That's crazy. And were they aware? So you tell them Damage Plan and you say, Dimebag Darrell, is that registering for them at all? They're like, who's that?
No, and I would say like the guy from Pantera, their new band, and blah blah blah. They had no fucking. I mean, I grew up on the Beach Boys, the Beatles. Like my dad listened to awesome music, still does to this day. Like in that time period, he knew who Guns N' Roses were. Like he tries to keep up, but like ultimately, my sister she was into musical theater and she got my parents into musical theater. So they were always going to shows like my dad's musical taste and my mom's musical taste shifted from like rock and roll to like Les Miserables and Miss Saigon and Phantom of the Opera and all that stuff, which is totally cool. But they just had no fucking idea. And I'll never forget it because when we did finally get signed to Metal Blade and then The Oncoming Storm came out and the record blew up, my grandmother approached me, which my grandmother's hilarious. She's just like a little Italian lady, cooked awesome, drank like she could drink so much booze she would never get drunk. Like she's just such a cool person. And she pulled me aside once. She's like, I hear you're going on tour with Ozzy Osbourne. And I was like, it's like, yep, Ozzy Osbourne. We're going on tour right now. And so until Ozfest really set in for my folks, like that's like they knew shit was happening, but like when they started seeing me on MTV. And they were like in all that other shit and like, Ozzy, those tours and just being exposed to like my new lifestyle. They were definitely worried about me because I Unearth was very athletic and we would always like play, we were always the types of guys that would like play, soccer or baseball on our van, like wiffle ball and stuff. And we turned into full blown alcoholics after we met Dimebag and all them. And then the debauchery kind of set in with like, all the shit that happens at Warped Tour and all that crazy stuff. And it was like a real ass, like before pre-internet ish, like real rock tour where ridiculous things happened on an hourly basis, never mind a daily basis. So my folks were definitely like, we're worried about our son, but we know that we raised him right and he has a good head on his shoulders, but it's definitely, they were definitely worried about me for years because of the excessive drinking and the gluttonous lifestyle, I guess, if you will.
And then how long does that last? Like how long does that whole period last for you in your career?
Well, it's kind of crazy because success to me, I was blessed with great sports teams as a kid and all that stuff. So like the validity of playing, or I don't know if that's the right word, but I used to play hockey in front of thousands of people in high school. So like that sense of like, oh shit, I don't want to fuck up in front of all these people was gone very early in my life. You had to overcome that, especially at a young age. So by the time like Stings of Conscience came out and we were doing our thing, we already kind of got famous, if you will call it that. I mean, signing autographs on a CD or something was never like, it still doesn't like feel great to me because I see myself as an equal to anybody. I don't really like feel like I'm anything special, but I do, if someone asks me for something, I will do it for them within reason. So we kind of hit it big in 2000 to the point where one of our biggest songs, Endless, we put out an EP. We put out an EP in between Stings of Conscience and the Oncoming Storm. And I remember getting an argument with my band that they didn't want to put Endless on the record. And I remember being like, it has to be. And like, yeah, but everybody already knows that song. And I'm like, what you perceive as everybody knows that song. Like we're signed to a major-ish kind of label. This is one of our best songs. It has to be on the record. So we already kind of already got to that point where we're like, well, we're famous and everyone knows what we're doing. Like we were already conscious of oh, we have to mind what we do because we're we've been doing it for like 3 years straight where like we're selling it to pile records, but we didn't anticipate like what came after that. Like in 2003, when we saw, and then we released The Oncoming Storm and the videos came out and all the attention we got, the guitar companies and amp companies and everything. And then like we sold so many fucking records. And then we went on tour with like Slipknot and stuff. And we were consistently selling like 2,500 records a week, well beyond like the big numbers that were coming out. But it was always like consistently like, what did we do this week? Oh, 3,000 records a week. Oh, what did we do this week? Oh, 2,500. It just became so normal in my head that like mass amounts of people just fucking buying records. And like, I think that record's probably close to like, it has to be at like 300,000 records sold at some, like, I don't know the numbers, but it did a lot of records, like it moved a lot of units, and we didn't anticipate any of that mentally, it definitely shifted so that was basically like 2000 to 2003, and then 2003 to like 2006. But then our follow-up record to The Oncoming Storm was In the Eyes of Fire. And we went in with Terry Date and all that other stuff. And there's two sides of that record. If you talk to Trevor or Buzz or anybody in the band, they'll say like that record was appropriate and awesome, and that's what they wanted to hear at the time and all that other stuff. I was on a different wavelength. That wasn't my favorite record. I was really like bummed out at the process. I was bummed out at the material. I was bummed out that we didn't play to a click track on it and all that other stuff. It just didn't feel professional to me. But ultimately, like, we did hard touring from 2006 through 2009 or 8. I think it was on that album cycle, but it was mainly all like European and Russian, and like we spent a lot of time overseas on that album cycle, and it definitely changed us to a certain degree, like when it comes to like hard touring at that point.
How many days a year?
I mean, I will say that there was one period of time that we were on during The Oncoming Storm, but I think we were on tour for a year and a half straight.
Oh, just nonstop.
And then we took like, I don't know, 3 months to 6 months to write a record. And you know how it is. You have your whole life to write your big record, and then like you have no time to write your second biggest record. And that's kind of like what happened to us. And we just like, we toured on that album like just as hard, year and a half, maybe straight again or whatever. And we just didn't stop. And yeah, I mean, I would say our biggest years are, 2001 to 2008, 2009, and then deathcore kind of set itself in. We started put out like records that were like doing okay, but not as like never as legendary as the other stuff. But we put out some pretty good songs. We tried to not like ruin our fan base by trying to change our sound and singing or becoming too death metal-y or whatever. We just tried to do the Unearth thing, the meat and potatoes, and we just stuck it out for all these years. And yeah, that's kind of like where we are to this day.
One of the best things you can do as a musician is to protect your own hearing. I've been using these Eargasm high-fidelity earplugs for months now, and I really love them. They're nice and discreet, high quality, and they don't make any of the sound muffled. They let in the right frequencies that I need on gigs or at shows. You can get 10% off your order if you use code MSALO10 at checkout. That's my first initial M, my last name Salo, SALOW 10 at checkout to get 10% off your order at eargasm.com. Wow, very cool. So at which point, how long have you been with Fishman?
I picked up Fishman in 2014.
Okay. And how did that come about? Were you already working with Fishman on like pickups for yourself, and then you just like, how did you end up with that gig? And what? Because I'm always curious because of if you were touring. I guess did the touring die down at that point a little bit?
Yeah. No. It would like Unearth is just gone full force all the time, every year, all the time. So we would always do like 3-year album cycle, record 3-year album cycle. It just never stopped. And I wrote the majority of a record called Darkness and the Light. It was one of those records that like definitely like I had inspiration and I went for it, and I was trying to like rekindle my feelings back in 2004 and write a record kind of within that time period. And sure enough, at that point, like we did Mayhem, JFO from Killswitch was playing, Killswitch was broken up for a while because of the Howard thing, and not broken up, but just on hiatus. And we picked up JFO to play with us for a while. And ultimately what ended up happening was we wrote this record and we did that tour, and things were just kind of like, in my opinion, they were kind of off a little bit, just as far as like our how people perceived us, what we were and what we are, and all that other stuff. And I still loved all the stuff that we were putting out, and then we did Watch as a Rule and all that stuff. But ultimately, how I landed at Fishman was I left one credit open on my college degree, meaning even though I graduated and walked in 2000, since I knew I was going to spend 2 years on the road, I decided to. I was going to get after the 2 years, I was just going to finish an elective and then have an up-to-date diploma. So 2001, I walk and I get an empty diploma, and I took pictures with my family and all this other crap. But then I literally would have finished my degree, took an elective, and then went to a job the next day and been like, hey, I have a 2023 diploma here, and I just graduated college and I've been on the road and blah, blah, blah. So I actually I didn't technically graduate college until 2014, when I realized that Unearth technically wasn't making enough money to support my particular lifestyle. So I just was ready about to, I think, exit the band to a certain degree. I just didn't it was tough for me to make ends meet. And I just didn't want to deplete my savings and stuff. And, it was just it was a really dark time for me. And I just out of nowhere, I went, I got a call. My brother is this underground, awesome Ibanez guy. He builds these Ibanez's and like these makeshift Ibanez's and does all this cool shit. And he's just very tied into that world. And a guy named Frank Falbo, who worked as a consultant at Fishman, was hounding my brother, is your brother Ken Susi? Have him come into Fishman sometime and this and that, blah, blah, blah. I blew Fishman off for 8 months. And what really ended up happening was I finally said to myself, you know what? It doesn't hurt to meet people. But I have the best hookup ever with EMG. They've always been supportive of me. And Seymour Duncan hooks me up with anything that I need whenever I need it, right? So I'm kind of I got the best of both worlds here. I don't know why I'm doing this. But I was I don't want to miss the opportunity of meeting a legend. And Larry Fishman, in my opinion, I was he's the Les Paul of acoustic guitar pickups and acoustic amplification. He's the highest gold standard of, guy you want to be involved with. So I said, it doesn't hurt to just meet somebody. And I went in there and they told me to bring all my nice guitars and all this other crazy stuff. And I literally was okay. I was let me hear what you got. And their guitars that were in these really cheap guitars and all the guitars that have pickups in it were smoking my Les Paul that was $7,000, and they were smoking my 7-string Ibanez's and all these LACS custom shops stuff. It was blowing my fucking mind how good these pickups were. And I was just Jesus, this is unbelievable. And I literally said to Larry, I was can I just take a couple of these home to try out? Because my mind is blown here, but I don't know if there's I need to take it into my studio kind of situation. The multi-voice and the no 60 cycle hum and it was all benefit, no crap, right? And Larry's yeah. He's let me give you my personal number. Just give me a call sometime. Let's just chat, whatever. And I was all right, cool. And they were courting me as an artist. So I went home. I really evaluated the pickups. I started taking pickups out of my guitars, swapping them. And I realized that one of the biggest problems I ever had in the studio was that Ibanez would build me an $8,000 guitar and they put EMGs or Seymours in it, but I would have the same type of pickup in there and the guitar would be genuinely made up of the same wood. And I was finding that when I would sit with a producer, they'd be this guitar is bright, this guitar is dark, this one's angry, this one's happy. And I would always be well, cool. And then they would pick up a Prestige or an ESP Horizon off the wall and be like, this is the guitar. It sounds great. And I'd be like, okay, all these $8,000 guitars that I have fucking suck compared to like, this doesn't make any sense. Until I met Larry Fishman and I realized, and I went through the process, pickups are very inconsistent and it ruins the guitars, or it can make a guitar great. So I started realizing very early on, I was like, wait a second, like, cause these pickups are consistent, cause they're built off of the 48 layer precision coil and all that stuff, I'm getting, like, I can now taste test the woods of the guitar because I know the pickup is just at a foundation perfect. And that's when my mind like blew up. I was like, okay. So not many people know this, but I think, fuck it, I'm going to just say it. Kemper was like, I did all their fucking artist relations. Let's just say that. I got a Kemper way early when they were putting out bullshit videos on YouTube where some German guy would be like, this is an amp, like fake and blah, blah, blah. And he was just doing the thing and no one could speak English. And then I got one of these units and a few other people had these units, but I fucking dove into it. And I was like, God, like at the time, the best solution I had, I would always get drunk or jump off cabs and fucking knock over microphones. I was like, I want something like this where I know like, it doesn't sound great on stage through a cab, with a power amp, but I'll say that like, at least I know whatever's going out in the front of the house is good. So I fucking ran this up the flagpole, Killswitch Engage, Trivium, Dino Cazares. I got them so many artists and they fucking wouldn't even give me a fucking unit for free. Like literally, like I got one unit and I asked for a backup unit, and I was actually putting up tutorials on YouTube how to fucking fix your Kemper when it breaks, like because there was like this thing like if you smash them hard enough, a PCBA would pop up, and I would like open it and show people, and people would like thank me online and shit. And I started doing their artist relations kind of like without them asking me, and then people would call me all night and ask me how to fix shit, and I just got to the point where I was like, guys, like, can I just like get a unit? You know what I mean? Like a free unit, like, cause I'm like doing all this shit and I'm touring constantly. And then they were like, no. And I was like, all right, cool. And I just like, my nose was bent out of shape with that. And, when I found I made them a shit ton of money cause they sold a shit ton of units after like they got all these guys playing the stuff. And I literally said I said like, once I found Fishman, I realized very quickly that the pickups were the greatest invention since the Floyd Rose. That was what I said at the time. I remember saying to myself in my head, like, this is the greatest invention since the Floyd Rose, if not better. It's the only thing like, Evertune makes a guitar better, but it's not perfect because you have to take like a lot of the wood out of the guitar, right? So you have to design the guitar around all that wood being taken away. Kempers and XFX and all these guys are good and they're getting close, but they're not necessarily better than a Marshall, or better than a 5150 or better than whatever amp, a Soldano. So I'm like, they're all Band-Aids, but Fishman made this pickup that actually enhanced the guitar. It enhanced the pickup situation. Like it was like elevating it to a new level where it wasn't just like a Band-Aid for something that wasn't broken. It actually made it far better. So I said to myself, I want to be a part of this. I don't care. Like, I want to talk to Larry, but I just want to let him know how genuine I am about how great I think this technology is. So I called Larry Fishman and I said, listen, I want to work for you, but I don't want a job. I'm a touring musician, this, that, or the other. I said, I just want to help. I don't think you have the right people in place. I don't think you have the right artist relations guy. I don't think you have the right, whatever. You guys are an acoustic company. You guys know acoustic stuff. You don't know the metal scene. They were thinking at the time Fishman was going to be like, Fluence was going to be this like great like Strat pickup or a Tele pickup or, you know what I mean, or classic that goes in Les Pauls. And honestly, I didn't see it that way because it's tough to convince somebody. Like I know all Fluence pickups are better than what's inside of a Fender and what's better inside of a Gibson. But like the funny part about that is that like I also know that demographic isn't just going to willy-nilly change their pickups right away.
Yeah.
So I said metal guys are going to fucking lose their mind over this, and then quickly everyone's going to realize how good the Strat stuff is and how good, like, really fast. And I just said to Larry, like, this is my vision. Don't pay me. I just want to help. I think you're a great guy. You run a great, you're very successful. I just want to be a part of your ecosystem and I just want to help. And Larry like had me in for 3 interviews and I wasn't really like asking for a job. And then it got down to the point where they're like, we want to hire you as a artist relations person. And I was like, well, they're like, how much do you want as a salary? And I was like, don't pay me anything. I don't give a shit. Like, I was like, like I've invested some of my money in real estate, and I'm like, I'm fine. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this shit. And Larry's like, no, seriously, like they cornered me and made me give them a number and I was like, I don't know, get your phone and look up how much a manager makes at McDonald's. I don't care. Just look, I go, whatever it is, it is. And like, sure enough, they came up higher than that. And they're like, all right, this is your salary. He like, come in 1 day a week, but just do what you do. And sure enough, like after 4 months of like the magic that Larry and myself and the team had together, and I was obviously growing in my position and learning from Larry, and like he's like my Willy Wonka, like I would learn from him and he'd learn from me, but mainly I would learn from him and sponge off of him to learn how he like runs a business and all that stuff. I started having like huge respect for Larry as a person and a business owner. It got to the point where he just like 4 months later, he introduced me to his wife at the Christmas party, and he was like, meet our new project manager, Ken Susi. And I was just like, I like looked at him and he looked at me, and it was like one of those like, what's that? And he goes, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Like he gave me like one of those, and I was like, all right, cool. And ever since then, I would say ever since that moment, Larry has kept me under his wing. He's protected me here at Fishman. There's no one in my life other than my family, my parents, and my siblings, and my best friend who has had my back as much as he has in the industry, at work, than Jason Cambra, my COO, and Larry Fishman. And Brian Fishman too. They have proven to me that like they can count on me. And I have mutual respect for them, and they protect me no matter what. And I protect their brand. And I even got in a conversation with them today, actually, about it. I just said, if I won the lottery today, I'd be in work tomorrow. You guys wouldn't pay me at all. My salary would be $1. And I said, I couldn't sleep at night. Even if I had 10 million or $2 trillion, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that I'm not a part of this. And this is my life's work.
So they were pretty good about then, of course, your touring lifestyle. So that made it pretty easy to integrate that.
Well, yeah, the short story of that is that I said to Jason and Larry, I sat them down at one point and I just said, I'm a touring musician, but I don't have to. It's tough to do this job remotely. And we all understand that you have to be here. But I said, like, I will quit touring 100% because I understand that this is a job. And I want you to know that like I'm serious about it, and this even takes precedent over my current band because I'm having the time of my life here, and we're having so much success. And like everyone's starting to see what I see, and you know what I mean? Like all the great things I knew about Fluence, people are starting to experience slowly, and it's so amazing to see that every day when someone's like, I never knew this existed, it just changed my life. That's what happened to me. I signed like Satchel and like Devin Townsend and Tosin Abasi, Tim Henson, Mick Thompson's a new artist that's like, holy shit, I can't believe this existed. Devin, Stephen Carpenter and Killswitch, Lamb of God, Willie, and all the artists I've ever been a part of are just like, these are mind blowing. Like these are my friends, but they're also like people that I didn't have to twist their arm to convince. These guys are pros, and they're like, no, this is the shit. And it's always, I find so much satisfaction still when the person has that holy shit moment with Fluence, and then they call me and then they're like, I can't believe I've ignored this for so long. You don't understand. You just changed my life. And I'll be like, I didn't change your life. You just fucking, you just like, you know what I mean? You just got around to it. And I did it. Everyone did it. You don't like, pickups are one of those things you just don't think of. And then when you actually like experience it, how quick the tone flies out of the amp, how versatile these pickups are, how noiseless they are, just all the tonal benefits, how phase aligned they are, and all that crazy stuff. Even if you like hook this thing up to a DI, you'll see that the DIs look like, in your chugging, it looks like snare hits. It's like consistent and perfect, and like there's no better pickup. It's still to this day like amazing to me that when this happens, when people come to this realization, they look at me and they're like, I should have listened to you years ago. And I'm like, well, told you so. totally cool. And the people that are like, oh, this shit sucks, or I don't even know, whatever, battery in the guitar or whatever, I'm just like, all right, well, keep playing your pickups until you come around, because you will. Because when everybody's like, your shit sucks and my shit's awesome, and you're wondering why your tone blows, then totally cool, me.
Dude, you got me all jacked up. I got that box of pickups behind me that I haven't put on my guitars yet, and I'm like, shit, I really want those to the guitar. Yeah, I got the. Oh, dude, I'm really excited to try them out now. Geez, you just.
What do you have?
I got so I got the Devin Townsend set for this guitar.
Great.
Which I'm super excited for. This huge Devin fan, and this is kind of my auxiliary guitar that does a lot of different things. And then I can show you what I got.
Well, that Devin guitar has D-Gauss magnets, and we have this engineer is super, super smart that, like, it sounds like a coconut, like you're knocking on a coconut, and knocks down the strength of the magnets. So that's a very unique pickup in the sense that, like, you get a modern sound with a hybrid magnet configuration, poles on the outside, blade on the inside. So it gives you that wild decay of a pole piece pickup, but it also gives you the smooth decay of a bladed magnet. And the cool part is you got like that modern sound with that, like, spongier kind of tone, which sounds sick. But I like how we did, like, voice 2 as a telly pickup. Yes. And then it's like a humbucker telly.
So I watched his demo of it, and that's what sold me on him, because I've been a huge Devin fan for a long time, and I wanted something more interesting in this guitar. So I went like classic core in this one, because I do a lot of like kind of like fusion and more straight ahead, like Guthrie Govan style stuff. I kind of do. Huge fan. And then I think I did the same. I got the 2 single coils, and then I think I did the core classic in this as well.
HSS.
Yeah, I did the HSS. You know what? I think it was a different one I did. Is there two like kind of PAF style, or is it just the core classic? Because maybe I just went that.
Well, the guitar, the blue guitar behind you is, if that has open core classics in it, the first voicing is like a legitimate PAF from, like, old PAF that, like, everyone always wished they could get a couple turns on with a little bit more output, but you can't do that with a traditional pickup. It's like squeezing a balloon, right? You squeeze the balloon on this sides get fatter. You squeeze the balloon on that side, this side gets fatter. Or if you squeeze it in both sides, the middle gets fatter. So when you add more turns to something that you think perceives as perfect, it actually changes the geometry of the, how much wires on the pickups, and it starts changing the tone. Whereas, like, Fluence, you dial it in and then you just up the gain. And, like, so that PAF is, like, I think the most true PAF that's out there in the world, other than, like, one of the old school ones. And the second voicing is a magical voicing. It's a hot rodded version. It's like what you would wish a JB sounded like today. That's like I honestly think it's a JB killer, because we do have, like, we listen, JB's like one of the most, like, coveted tones in the world. There's issues with, like, every single pickup. Like, if I gave you the greatest sounding JB in the world, you'd put it in your guitar and you'd be psyched. But if you ever try to buy another one, it would never sound as good as that one, because I've been through the process.
I didn't realize they were that inconsistent. Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, it's every pickup. So I didn't realize this until Larry taught me. If I asked you to tie your shoe, like, 1,000 times the same way, or twice the same way, 1,000 times, you would never be able to recreate that. And the same thing happens with when you're winding pickups. There's a little bit of forgiveness, but I will tell you that if you bought, and this is why I love the comparison videos and stuff online, when kids are like, oh, modern versus a juggernaut or whatever, like, whatever it is. I'm like, okay, whatever your comparison is, that's totally cool. Do me a favor. Buy 5 of those other Seymour Duncan pickups, or whatever, or EMGs or DiMarzios, but buy 5 other ones, put them in the same guitar, and then do the comparison just to its own pickup, and you'll see how wildly off they are. And all that, like, mythological bullshit about, this person whined Jimi Hendrix's pickups, or this person climbed a mountain and fucking did it with unicorn dander or whatever. It's like all that marketing bullshit is just there to, like, sell you pickups, because they don't know how to sell you anything, the same thing over and over. Where Fishman is like, oh, we know exactly what that pickup's doing. We see the magnetic field. We know how it sounds. We use subtractive and additive sometimes, but mostly subtractive. We sculpt the tone, EQ. We do it right there in a DSP, and it's perfect. And I've had like perfect pickups, like even like a Seymour that like I've only heard like one amazing like this is like a coveted like Seymour that you would have to spend $600 on, like just one pickup probably. And like, I've heard the difference between that and Fluence, and it's like, we corrected all the shit that was like, should have been corrected in the perfect pickup. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just like one of those things where like EMG, Seymour Duncan, all these wire wound pickups can't even be consistent with themselves, where we are dead nuts on with every pickup.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing. I'm, like I said, super stoked to try them out. Let me see and make sure I told you the right ones here. And then I can show them on screen a little bit too. Let's see the other one. I couldn't remember the other one I had. So I got the SSA one, like you had said. Was it
Yep.
open core? Classic humbucker.
Great.
So
yeah.
that's what I got for the Strat.
Yep.
And then I had classic core. I know it's classic core, open core classic. Sorry.
Open core.
For the blue guitar. Oh, I'm out.
Yep.
I'm out of. Here, let's try to fix.
That's okay. Yeah, that happens.
It'll come back in, I think, in a second here. And then the Devon stuff. I'm really excited. I'm super stoked on trying the Devon ones out, dude.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing too, you pulled out a battery pack there for a second. One thing I want to talk about with the battery pack that's so awesome is that for years I was one of those guys who battled a 9-volt on stage. I would always blame my guitar if my tone wasn't right. And I would always be like, oh, my 9-volt's probably dead, or my guitar tech would be like, no, but I changed it and dated it and blah, 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 blah. So honestly, if you're using Fluence, you get 200 hours of charge time, and it's always a consistent 9 volts. So like your phone is a prime example. Your phone gives you power until the battery runs out and then it dies, right? And it doesn't work anymore. With Fluence, you get 10 hours of buffer time. It alerts you when you have 10 hours left. And the cool part about it is you have 200 hours, and then when you're done with that, you just recharge it, and then the 200 hours starts over again. But it's always a consistent 9 volts. Whereas if you put a 9 volt in your EMGs or your Seymour Duncans or whatever, the battery depletes over time and it just changes the tone of your guitar.
Yeah, for sure.
And so my thing is I don't care. I'm agnostic. If your favorite pickup is an EMG or Seymour Duncan Blackout and requires battery, you still should be using the Fluence battery packs, because it always gives you a consistent 9 volt of charge. And even though you can get like 200 hours of Fluence with an EMG or Seymour Duncan, you probably get like, I don't know, I would guess like 1,000 hours or something, because the circuitry is so like barbaric, I'll say, inside. There's not much in there, and it'll probably power forever. But yeah, the people that like, people don't understand too, you know, the battery thing I can understand as a hurdle for somebody, but I think like Tosin and Tim Henson and all these artists that we have proven, they say all the time, it's powering the technology. It's not powering the tone per se. The coils in itself in the PCBA in the pickup need power in order to function, but the tone is what's in there. It's embedded in there, and it just needs power to run. But like, it's the same thing with your television set versus an old tube television. You know, an old tube television looks distorted and fuzzy, and it'll probably shock you if you touch the screen. But if you use a high def TV, you could see a pimple on someone's face. So that's what Fluence is doing. I mean, yes, it requires battery, but you're achieving the best passive tones or the best active tones with our circuitry.
Yeah, and one thing actually that I was super stoked on was this battery, because that seemed, I was really nervous because I was like, you know, where am I going to have room to put a battery? And then when I saw these, I was like, whoa, what the fuck? That's like the best idea for a battery pack, because two of my guitar, I mean, I got two of these and I got a universal one for that one because it doesn't have the back. But that I thought was really, I'm really excited about this because I thought it was really innovative to take something that already existed there, just make it a tiny bit thicker and make it a battery.
It's super slick. Yeah, I love them. And I won't run Fluence without it. And to be totally honest with you, talking about passive pickups and stuff, I have a Les Paul. Let's just say this: I have a gold top Les Paul that was my guitar. Like it was the guitar that like everyone borrowed, and it was like, oh, this is what a Les Paul should sound like. And I was doing a record, and I remember I was just kind of like, all right, I'm going to plug in my Les Paul, see how it sounds. And then I had a Ibanez Roadstar. And if anybody knows what an Ibanez Roadstar is, it's probably like a $400 guitar, Japanese made, but basswood. Oh, no, not even Indonesian probably, but it's made with basswood. It's just like not like a great guitar, but it's cool for what it is. I had Fluence in that, and it was blowing away my Les Paul. And I remembered always being like, I'm never going to change the pickups to Les Paul. I'm going to keep it organic. I'm going to keep it real. I'm just always just going to have this guitar. And sure enough, like that session, I was like, this is bullshit. I'm like, I got to get rid of these fucking pickups in here. And I literally put Fluence in there, and I've never changed it back. I saved it in case if I want to sell the Les Paul someday. But ultimately, I have not thought about those pickups a single time after that.
I think sorry. I just lost myself a little bit there. I wonder what happened there. Anyway, yeah, dude, that's great. I'm super stoked on trying these out. So I guess the last thing then that then leads me to like, then you end up in As I Lay Dying, and that's what your current gig is, correct? And you've been doing that for like a year or so, I imagine you've known those guys for a while.
Well, yeah, there's some stuff that happened within Unearth where I had to remove myself from that band. It's the band I started, and it's the band I always loved, but unfortunately, things didn't work out relationship-wise with me and the guys. Like we are all friends, like Trevor, myself, Buzz, Mike, Justin. Like, you know, we are friends. But when it comes to business and how to run a band and all that good stuff, I just came to the conclusion that I didn't want to be the guy always saying no. And they were the guys that always want to do certain things, and they want to run the business a certain way. And it got to the point where it was very conflicting. And there was some other things that were kind of underlining there too. But ultimately, I decided to, just go my own way and, tell them like, like guys, like forge on, do what you got to do, but I just can't be a part of this. And it's totally cool because I like I think they're doing pretty well. I haven't really been keeping tabs on what they're doing, but I just bumped into them in Europe and it was cool hang, like got to see Buzz, got to high five the guys, have a couple shots. It was really fun to hang out with them. We'll always be bounded by blood, we're brothers. But yeah, I was supposed to fill in for As I Lay Dying in 2019 when Nick Hippa left, and COVID happened and all that stuff happened. And it got down to the point where like I found myself around the COVID time, without a band. And I was supposed to still fill in with As I Lay Dying. That was still like something I was supposed to do. And that just became more of a conversation when they hit me back up to fill in. They were just like, oh, you're out of Unearth. Like, what happened? And we talked, and then they're like, well, would you want to play for us for a while and see how it goes? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I said, there's not many bands on the planet that I could play for personally. Like, I see myself like, I grew up with As I Lay Dying, like as friends, as peers, Killswitch Engage, Every Time I Die. These are the guys that like I would call and hang out with, or if they're in town, I would hang out with. So it's like, there's only a few bands I could have played in. And luckily one of them had a spot where I enjoy the music. It's something that I like, lift weights to when I go to the gym and listen. It's on my playlist. So I was just kind of like, all right, this is cool. And I've been playing with them ever since. And it's been really fun. Tim is the same guy I knew from when I met him in, 2001. I know he's had stuff that, went down that's, polarizing for some people. And some people, what I like to say is, I'll leave it here. People only remember the worst thing you've ever done, right? No one ever remembers the great things you do. They always remember the worst thing you've ever done. And some people are just idolized, like, Dave Grohl or whatever. But, like, if you're lucky in life to be squeaky clean, it's totally fine. But he did a bad thing, but ultimately, like, that doesn't define him as a person. And I know exactly who he is and who I'm playing in a band with. And he's been really great. And Phil's been really great. My relationship's still good with Nick Hippa and Jordan, I know, and Josh. Like, I still have a strong relationship with like all those people. Still my friends. Nothing's changed. And the new band is Nick Pierce is playing drums from Unearth and As I Lay Dying. He left shortly after I did, and As I Lay Dying scooped him up. I didn't even know about it, and then
Interesting.
Ryan Neff, yeah, Ryan Neff's fantastic person took over for Josh. So the band's like really firing all cylinders. I'd say we have a lot to prove, and we've been doing really good. Like some people have been saying, like, you guys sound like, you know what I mean? Some people are like, you sound better than the original band, and I discard that. Like every band, whatever. I don't like pay attention to that stuff, but I will say, like, we are playing really tight and we sound really good together.
Nice, man. Are you guys? Do you have any upcoming dates?
We'll probably be on tour. We're trying to finish up a record right now, and we're down to the overdub solo part, like writing solos and stuff. And we should be like hopefully on the road by like February.
Cool. Great, man. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you being on. This was great.
Yeah, dude, I didn't say it I told you off camera, but I should have said it more. You're a fantastic guitar player. I love everything you do on your channel.
Thanks.
And someday I hope to be as good as you.
Oh, whatever. Don't say that. Yeah, no. Yeah, man, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. It's one question I meant to ask that I never got to ask. And maybe we can talk about it now, or maybe after I hit the record or stop the record. But was your take on kind of the new age of like social media and bands kind of being built through social media, and what your thoughts are on all that stuff?
Well, it's actually pretty funny. I back in the MySpace days, labels were just plucking bands out of a specific area that were somewhat good. And I remember specifically I was dating some girl in like Indiana near Chicago, and her brother's band recorded with me once, and like they were just like some bullshit, like a wicked, like a you know what I mean, like a low rate Warped Tour, whatever some label could squeeze out of a bunch of kids, and they all thought they were all buying like new cars and shit, thinking they were gonna be the biggest fucking shit in the world. But I remember that was my first like, holy shit, like this is my like social media. This is my first time I saw social media be like this thing where a band out of nowhere, no followers, no nothing, just gets swooped up. They put them in the machine, they shake them up, throw them out there, see if it works. And if it doesn't, they pull the rug out from under them, or they keep them on tour. This band did not work out. So that was kind of like, that was very eye opening. And I will say, like, this is a practice that has been going on since the dawn of time. I mean, think about it. The Monkees wouldn't exist if that type of shit wasn't going on.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
This has all been happening for years. So I've come to accept it. But it's the one thing that was like to me super hard is that like we put out The Oncoming Storm, and in 2004, and by 2006, I felt like there was already 10 bands that already did what we did just as good. You know what I mean? But like, it was just like, holy shit, like everyone's playing like us already. And it's like, how are we going to write another record when everybody's already like written another, 10 Unearth records,
Yeah, man. Yeah, I forgot about the MySpace days. I remember specific bands that I discovered on MySpace getting, was Trivium on MySpace first?
I don't know. They got signed to Roadrunner, but they were definitely like, they were the first metal band. And like, I love Matt Heafy. He's one of my artists and stuff, and maybe he could speak to this better than I could. But my perspective of like what was happening was they were the first like band that people perceived as like a boy band, metal band. Like I remember that, like I remember like being like, because you gotta remember, like a lot of us like, did some hard time in some vans and shit. You know what I mean? Like years, like us and Every Time I Die and Lamb of God and like all these bands, like we put in our time. And I remember like someone being like, oh, Trivium's on stage, Trivium's going on stage, and they have like people like dressing them or helping them dress or whatever. I don't know if that's true or not. These are just like folklore rumors and shit. But I remember being like, God, like, what's that like? Like, I remember being like totally amazed that was happening in the metal scene, if that was happening. And so that was like a definitely like crazy thing. And that started happening, or whatever people were saying about that band. But the coolest part about that whole thing, even if it was true, like Trivium's one of those bands where, God, they're just like, they persevere more than any band I think I've ever seen, just because like Matt Heafy and Corey and all those guys are so driven that they like whatever the faux pas was about them or whatever, they have like solidified themselves as this like machine, and they just keep doing it, and they'll like get big. They did that band in my head just never gets like less big. They always get like, even if they're like they got big, they always seem to like get a little bigger even as the years go on. I just don't know what it is about them, but like I guess long story short, like whatever people were saying about them when they came out, I think like they proved them wrong now.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to recall if I first heard them on MySpace or if I'm mistaking them with someone else. But if that's the case, I mean, he's got a real hold on Twitch too, which is wild to think that the Twitch thing. I seeing how well he's done on Twitch, was so mind blowing to me. Like him and Herman Lee, and seeing how they've kind of developed this crazy following on that platform. When I'm still kind of new to the whole Twitch thing and trying to figure out exactly how to make it work in any way. That's a whole other topic. But yeah, man. Yeah, dude. Hey, I appreciate you being on, and I'll let you get back to work here. I know you're in the office, so
yeah,
appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Yeah, it's actually time for me to drive home. So listen, thanks for spending the end of my day, and keep in touch, dude. Anytime you're in town, hit me up.
If you'd like to join my Patreon to get your questions answered by the guests, then you can go to patreon.com/Mike Salo. There are several tiers there that you can take part in, and lots of different perks like pre-recorded guitar lessons or even one-on-one guitar lessons with me. There are live masterclasses every week for certain tiers. And again, you can go to patreon.com/Mike Salo to check that out.